I turned off my live. I'm like, what the heck just happened? I'm over here talking and it says there's literally nobody on. Goodness. Good thing I caught that early on instead of us being like deep into the study. So, good morning again. I'm going to redo all of this for you guys. Thankfully, we were like a minute into it. You know what's weird? I've been doing these Bible studies for so long. I can tell just by the way that the chat is moving if something is off. So when it is very quiet, I'm like, ooh, there's something missing. And I don't know what happened. I just plugged in my mic and it turned the live off. So thank you guys for being on here again. Good morning. So we're going to be in Exodus 36. Thank you guys for popping right back off. You're like, I'm sure some of you guys are like, oh, what just happened? I was like, oh no. And then I look at the bottom and it says go live. And I'm like, what on earth? So, because I asked you, I said, can you guys hear me okay? And can you guys hear my music? If so, please let me know. But I'm going to just start this whole thing over again. Cindy. I know I was thinking that today. I was like, oh no, she's probably going to worry about me. So we are in Exodus 36 this morning. I pray that you all are having a beautiful day so far. I know some of you guys are just waking up. Where we're going to be at in Exodus 36, there's a group of builders and they walk off the job to go find their boss. Nothing is missing. Okay, the people keep bringing material every single morning. If you remember where we were at yesterday, people were bringing exactly what God had told them to bring. And they keep bringing it every single morning. And this pile has gotten so large that the builders can't even get to where they're trying to work at this point. And they're like, please stop bringing, please stop bringing things. It's gotten to the point where we can't even handle how much we have. They're asking for permission to stop accepting it. So this man that's in charge, he does something that nobody in the camp ever expected a leader to do before. He tells them to stop. He says, we have more than enough. Okay. And so as you guys are getting settled, I want to ask you a question that I normally ask you. Obviously, it's a different one every day. You can answer with yes or no this time. Good morning. So have you ever kept going on something long after it was already finished because nobody told you that it was okay to stop? You could either yes or no. I'm going to be coming back to this at the end. Okay. So my question for you guys to think about today, and you guys could put the yes or no in the comments. Have you ever kept going on something long after it was already finished because nobody actually told you to quit? So here's what's actually going on underneath that question. So most of us have never been taught to recognize enough as like a real category. We're kind of taught to recognize when we're tired, right? We're taught to recognize like finish when somebody else says so, but enough on our own, like more as something that like we call for ourselves. I don't think nobody hands us that skill. Okay, so we keep producing past the point where the actual assignment needed us to go. And then we kind of call it diligence, when in reality, it's just the only setting that we know how to operate in. So what we're going to be seeing today in Exodus 36, this is the chapter where an entire camp gets told to stop giving and has nothing to do with failure. So the complete opposite actually happened. They succeeded so completely that the leader had to be the one to call it off. So by the end of this morning, I hope that you guys can see, or like that you're going to know what it feels like when somebody else recognizes the moment that you couldn't recognize yourself. You're going to know how to start recognizing it on your own. So, how is your day going? I'm excited to have you guys here. Feels like a slower morning today. Can you guys hear my music at all? Sometimes as I get adjusted, sometimes I can test it ahead of time. Sometimes it takes me a minute. But if you guys can hear it, let me know. And if my audio sounds okay, or if I'm being quiet, you guys let me know. But we're going to be in Exodus 36. What do you guys have for your morning? Are you working today? Are you off? Do you have kids and their activities? Are you home with them for the summer? What does that look like for your day as we get started? Thank you guys for also letting me know. You're working remotely. Good. You're taking your nephew to school. Good. I had yesterday, well, I'm home working today. Yesterday, I had my oil change and taking my son to camp and all of the things, and then came home, made burgers for dinner, hung out with my mom. We were going to go to the farmer's market. There's one in the evening on Wednesdays. Come to find out, it doesn't start until July 1st. So I just hung out with her at her house after I picked up my boys from daycare and camp. And today is just a chill day. It feels like one of those days it's overcast right now. So you're at home still in bed. You love the Amish market? I've never been to one. Do you guys have farmers markets in your area? We have so many. Thank you, Ruby. We have so many. We have them pretty much all over. And I love going to them. They're fun. So, you do. Do you guys go? In Greece Tuesday, Wes. My son's name is Wes. You ate a taco, some sweet bread, now you're drinking your coffee. Yum. Are you guys like a hot or iced coffee type of person? I'm always iced coffee. It's very rare that you'll catch me with hot coffee. Very rare. We're just getting settled here. So if you guys are just joining us, we're going to get started in our Bible study this morning. I love having intentional time with you guys before I get deep into scripture, because I tend to just get laser focused on it. I did also want to say this. Forgive me for sometimes not recognizing the hearts and the follows and the gifts. I see them and I appreciate them more than what you know. I thank you for them. I need to get a little bit better about recognizing it as we're actually on the study. But I thank you guys for that. It means a lot. I'm not ready to share what I do with well, I guess I could. Every time you guys send gifts, obviously TikTok takes a portion of it. But for the past couple of months, oh my goodness. All right, did you guys lose me? I'm wondering if that's what happened, is that it lost connection. Because it said that it was trying to connect. I'm good now though, right? Is it lagging or slow at all? You lost me a little bit. Maybe God's not ready for me to share it. Because I was literally going to tell you what I was doing with it. I'll wait. So, we're going to get into Exodus 36 today. Praying. As we go into our prayer, I'm going to pray that no tech issues come to be. So you guys pray that with me, okay? I've already had 2 so far, actually 3 so far this morning. One of them was mine. I don't know what happened to the live earlier, but. All right, so as we were getting started, one of the things that I asked you guys, if my mouse decides to work, one of the things that I asked you all at the beginning of this live, and I ask you to hold on to this question as we go through, have you ever kept going on something long after it was already finished because nobody actually told you that it was okay to stop? You can just put a Y or an N or a yes or a no, but you kept going after somebody, after things were finished, and you're like, well, nobody said to stop, so I'm just going to keep going. Or did you kind of take that discernment on your own? This is the thread of what we're going to be in Exodus 36 today, so there's relevance in it. One of the things that I told you guys, if you joined a little bit after this, I ask you that because there's a part underneath that question in that most of us were never taught to really recognize when enough is enough. We're more often than not taught to recognize tired, right? We're taught to recognize finished most of the time when somebody else says so. But enough in and of itself, on its own, nobody hands us that skill. We just have to take our own discernment for it. So in Exodus 36, this is the part where the entire camp gets told to stop giving. Okay. And so my goal is that by the end of it, you guys can recognize in those moments sometimes when enough is enough, without anybody else having to tell you. I think one of the things too is there's a moment in this chapter where the people are building something for God, and they have to stop and tell him through the men that are in charge of the project that they have already given enough. Not because anybody else failed, but because the giving outran the need, which is so amazing that they were giving with willing hearts. Somebody had to out loud tell them, no more. We're going to sit with that for the next 2 hours because I think most of us have never been the one who got to say that sentence for ourselves. Like, we kept showing up to things that were already covered, and we kept producing past the point that the need actually asked you to produce to. And the entire time you've been waiting on somebody else to just walk over and tell you this is enough. We got it covered, right? In the same way that the craftsmen walked over to Moses, today we're gonna watch exactly who God puts in that role. So by the time we close this morning, I pray that you know what it looks like to call it finished on your own. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our prayer, and each Bible study, especially if you're new here, if this is your first time, we want to welcome you. I'm gonna forget to say that. I want to welcome you to this live. Can you let us know who you are? We want to tell you good morning. We're going to pray over one another, and then we're going to get started here in the study. I'll give you a recap, but I want to see who's in the room with us. I want to get to know you by name. So at the bottom left of your screen, I have a gift for all of you that are new. There is a little option that says New Live Viewer Thank You. There's that for you. And then if you want to catch up on all of the replays, you can. I have them in a little vault for you. And I send you the replays each and every day at the end of the day. So you can also add it to your calendar when we do our studies, because I go live every Monday through Friday at around 9 a.m. Central. I was a little late today. Today was giving me a few, it threw me off today. But I usually go live around 9. And I go live for about 2 hours. And if you need to hop off, that is totally okay. You can catch those replays. But good morning. Good morning. If you are a man, you are still allowed in. Okay? You are still allowed in. I want to say this too, especially for those of you that are newer. I don't say this every single live, but I don't always get to every question as it comes in right away. I try to. I try to interact with you guys as much as I can. But sometimes I don't answer the questions right away because I'm in the moment and I'm trying to get to the through line before I stop. So you can definitely stay. Okay. Sometimes guys are kind of, we find some of the men in here can't relate quite as much to some of the things that I talk about. And so you relate it to your own perspective. Okay. So we're going to go into our prayer. So go ahead and put your prayer request in the chat and we'll pray over one another. Good morning, Aurora. So it can just be one word. God knows all the details of what you're going through. And I encourage you guys, as you see the comments coming through, I invite you to pray over one person at least. Pray over them. I genuinely believe where 2 or more are gathered, there he is. And our prayers are prayers that God hears, and we can intercede on behalf of others. So we're going to pray and get started. So Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. Thank you for your word. I pray that it brings a comfort and a closeness to you. I pray that it highlights new things that maybe we weren't aware of in this book of Exodus. Father, please give me the wisdom and discernment to represent your word accurately. These comments as they come through, I know that you see the depth of everything that they're struggling with. I pray that in these moments, as we find in the struggle, that we can recognize you and still see you in the midst of all of it. To remember to keep our eyes focused on you. You are our healer. You are our provider. You are our banner. You go before us, and you have made a way. And I thank you for that. I pray that even through the struggle, we can give you a shout of praise. You are a good Father. Father, I pray today that no weapons formed against us shall prosper, that we can walk in the fullness of the gift that today actually is. Thank you for bringing everyone that is on this live or watching the replay or will join our live in the future. I pray for blessings of peace that surpasses the circumstances that they may find themselves in. I pray for abundance in their finances, in their marriage, restoration. We know that you know all the details of everything, even the comments that are left unsaid. You know their hearts. Please align our heart posture to be in alignment with your will. Please highlight the things that maybe we're struggling with because you're trying to heal something for us. Please bring to the surface things that allow us to be closer to you. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right. So, gosh, every single time I pray and then open up my eyes, it's like, oh my goodness, So, we're going to get started. We are, if you guys are just joining, we are in Exodus 36. We're going to talk about the moment that you can't tell anymore whether you have been faithful or you've just never learned how to stop. Like you keep showing up to something that's already covered and you keep producing kind of past the point that anybody actually needed you to. Somewhere in the back of your mind, like when we experience those things, I think sometimes what we have decided is that element of it is devotion, when really it might just be that that's the only setting that you've ever known. You've only ever known how to operate like past the point when you needed to stop, because nobody ever told you that you've done enough. I think that's when burnout tends to set in. We just keep going and going and going and going because it matters so much to us. I find that happens a lot, especially in the women that I coach, that we get to that point because what we're doing, we feel like that's tied to our calling, to our identity, to our purpose. And we want to be a cheerful giver, right? We want to walk in the fullness of what God has ordained for us. So sometimes it's hard to kind of recognize when enough is enough and God calls us into rest. So what we're going to do, we were in Exodus 35 yesterday, and I'm just going to give you a quick recap because today it doesn't fully make sense without yesterday. And so in Exodus 35, what's happening is Moses is actually gathering the whole congregation back together. This is right after the golden calf disaster. And the first thing out of his mouth, it isn't punishment, it's the Sabbath commandment, okay? This is repeated word for word. And then he makes the ask from them, right? God says, I know that you failed. He doesn't say it like that, but he knows that they had just committed a very grievous sin. And he's wanting to restore that relationship. And what he says is, I want you to give from the willingness of your heart, right? He doesn't want a forced gift. He doesn't want forced obedience. But he calls them into rest before he calls them into any work. And we see God doing that time and time and time again in Scripture. And so what he does is then Moses asks them for all of their gold and their silver and their linens, so many different things. He lists it all out. He says the purple and scarlet thread, the fine linen, the goat hair, the ram skin, the acacia wood, the oil, all of that, right? This is the exact same congregation that melted gold into an idol a few chapters earlier, and then it gets handed as an itemized list, and they're told to bring it in. And they do. They don't even do it in stages. They don't give the smaller version of their offering first. Men come and women come, and the leaders, they all bring jewelry off their own bodies. And these skilled women, they sit down and they spin thread with their own hands. And then these two men, Beazel and Oholib, they get named publicly as the two men that God filled with everything that was needed to actually build this tabernacle. So Moses doesn't audit anybody's heart before he lets them participate. He just opens the door and he says, you give from the willingness of your heart. He opens the door and the camp walks through. So this is exactly where we're going to pick up this morning. This is the giving in Exodus 35, and it didn't taper off. You know how sometimes the thing that I think of is think of like a GoFundMe account, right? You see a need, and this is different, but just think of this. You see a need, and people like initially they give and give and give and give and give, and then it just kind of tapers off. They didn't do that here. They kept going in such an abundance that the people that were building the tabernacle had to physically stop and go report it and say, okay, we're good. Thank you for giving so much. Today is what happens next. So before we move into this verse, I want you to take a second with this question, okay? I want you to think of an instruction that God actually already gave you, and he gave it to you very clearly. It was probably something simple, and you knew exactly what to do with it. Okay, so think of that. And then ask yourself whether you left it there or whether you added your own additions on top of it. Like you put more hours in it than it called for, or there was more proof attached to it. Like you felt like this version of what God handed you, it was like too plain. So you just kind of kept adding more to it. It could be like a decision that you already made peace with, and then you keep reopening it one more time for confirmation, or like a boundary you set. You don't have to answer it out loud. I just want that question to sit with you guys today as we go through this. Also, hi, Aunt Tina. I'm so happy you're back. All right, so we're getting into Exodus 36. So I'll read Exodus 36, verse 1. It says, and Beazel and Oliab, and every gifted artisan in whom the Lord has put wisdom and understanding to know how to do all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary, shall do according to all the Lord has commanded. Okay? So this verse is doing so much more than just introducing these two names. It's telling you that these men did exactly what was commanded. They didn't do anything more intensive. They didn't improvise anything. So in this project, it was very large. And if you guys aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, this is the building of the tabernacle. And if you're like, Vanessa, what's the tabernacle? God had instructed Moses to build this tabernacle when he was on Mount Sinai, and he had given him all the details. He told him everything in depth of what to use, down to the materials and the measurements, every element of it, the colors of the curtains. He was so intricate in all of it. Moses kept that in his mind, and then he went down to the mountain. And from this point, this was just in Moses's head, right? Not that he imagined it, but it hadn't been built yet. And so what happened is that he went on to go down to the mountain because God said, your people are building a golden calf. You need to go down to them. This was when Moses was receiving the 10 Commandments. And from there, Moses went down. These people were they had built a golden calf from this jewelry, and they were worshiping it. So you guys are probably familiar with this piece of it. So then Moses gets mad. He breaks the stone commandments. And from there, a lot happens, right? You guys can go get the recap. I'm not going to go super in depth with it. But God had decided, this tabernacle, he said, I'm not going to dwell with you anymore. You guys can go on your own. You've seen the movie. I bet if you read the book, it's better. So that usually happens too. You see a movie, but the book version is better. This one for sure is. It's nice to visualize it though. I think I plan to, which one of you was it? Was it Mary or Cindy? Which one of you ladies in our Discord chat sent the tabernacle building? I showed you guys photos of it in one of the other lives. It was Cindy. Okay. Yes. Letty, you did too. Actually, Cindy did it in our Discord chat. You guys are all sending me stuff and I love it. Letty sent me the altar and the tabernacle. Cindy sent us, and if you guys are not in our Discord chat, ladies, and you want to be, you absolutely can. This is our like space where we just connect outside of the live. But anyway, I plan to show you guys those images again, and then the journey through where they took all the way to Exodus when we finish Exodus. So like probably, where are we at? We're in 36. It goes through, I can't remember how long Exodus is, 40. So that'll be next week. I'll show you guys all of the other parts of it. And if you guys want to see what I've showed you, those are in the replays. But anyway, God had said that he was going to take away, like he wasn't going to go with them anymore through to the promised land. He said, I'll send an angel to walk with you. I'm not going to walk with you. This tabernacle is the dwelling place of God. Like God was going to dwell with his people. He so much so wanted to just be. He wants to be with us continually. And so he had given Moses these instructions. And so I'm like talking so much, I'm forgetting where I'm going with this. So at this point, this verse is just doing so much more than introducing you to these two men. He has given them this dwelling, like these instructions for this tabernacle. There's over 2 million people. I don't know how I do a daily recap. It is a lot to remember. Well, I write it down so that I have to write everything down, you guys. Otherwise, I will forget exactly where I'm going. But what happens is this tabernacle has to be built in a way that it can be disassembled and reassembled as they're walking through the wilderness. And so he's telling these men, like, this is one of the most important projects, and it's massive. It's so large. It has so much material, okay? It has so much material and new material being flooded in because these people are delivering it in like massive amounts to the point that these men who are trying to work in this area can't even move through it. So that there's like this temptation though, when we're given like a project kind of this large with this much material flooding in, there's a temptation to kind of add like our own personal touch to something, right? Like we want to kind of make it our own, especially I think when we're building a business, and I get that. But sometimes God gives us very detailed, intricate instructions, and we're not intended to add any more to it. So the text, it actually makes a point of saying that they built according to what the Lord had commanded. The skill God gave them, that was theirs, but the blueprint was not. Okay, so like that just makes me think sometimes there's things that we tend to add to like our lives and our businesses, and God's like, I gave you these talents and these skills, and I want you to execute on it, but like you need to do it exactly as I've instructed. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to be like, well, am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? And God is like, I made it very clear. Only do this. I don't know if I've had instances in my life that it's like that clear, down to the very instruction of what I'm supposed to use. But like, yes, sometimes God is like, Vanessa, you don't need to do all that. And then I do it and I'm like, man, why am I so tired? Right? That's usually what ends up happening. But I love that God called them into rest, like to remind them that it is an important part of this before you even get started on it. So in Exodus 36, it says, then Moses called Bezalel and Oholiab and every gifted artisan in whose heart the Lord had put wisdom, everyone whose heart was stirred to come and do the work. Okay. You'll notice I don't always go verse by verse, but I'm doing that today. So there's a part in this that I want to dive deeper into because Moses doesn't just pull names out of a hat for this job, right? I keep emphasizing this, but there's over 2 million people. There was probably a lot of people that he could have chosen from. Okay. Thank you, Erica. Moses doesn't just pick random people, right? Yes, we believe in only one God. He doesn't go looking for the most experience or even the most available. He's not like, raise your hand if you want to be apply for this job. No, he calls very specific people whose hearts were already stirred towards it. Okay, that willingness, it came before the assignment did. I want to I want to go deeper into that, okay? This is so relevant to us, especially as women who are building businesses, who are stewarding what God has called us into. Whether that is business or your 9 to 5 or in your homes, whatever that looks like, we tend to think the assignment shows up first and then the willingness has to be talked into existence afterwards. It's showing us that the stirring came first and the call, it just confirmed what was already there. So when what I see in this is God designs things with very intentional people in mind. Like he goes before us and he creates the calling on your life, right? I told you guys yesterday, and as we go through our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge, I know we're in day 2, but when we spoke about it yesterday, the call on your life is irrevocable. Okay? The enemy cannot change it. Your obedience to the assignment is what changes. That has a season, right? Sometimes you miss that season in that window and what people needed most from you because you don't walk in the obedience of what God has called you to. The calling on your life doesn't change, but the people that you were meant to serve in that specific season needed it in that season. So sometimes you miss that part of it. And so what this kind of tells me is that God, it's kind of like, think about it in the workplace. If any of you guys have worked in corporate, you guys know sometimes opportunities, like they'll post a job offering, but really the job was created with one person in mind. I know that's how it is, what God does. He has you in mind. When he gave you that specific calling on your life, he designed it specifically for you, not for anybody else. So this assignment, he had already filled these men with the gifts and the talents that were so necessary that nobody else could have performed this task in the way that they did. He knew that. It's the same with us. I tend to think, especially as I'm coaching women, they tend to think that like this thought comes into our minds, like that interference that we talk about in our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge. And I keep going back to that because I created that challenge because it's so relevant in every area. The doubt comes into our minds and we think that we're not qualified for it. We want to compare ourselves to other people. We take on more than what we need, so we add more to it. There's so many elements of it, right? And God said, don't add more to it. I gave you the very specific instructions. Don't hand it off to somebody else. Don't compare yourself to this other person because you're the only one that can do it. It was made for you. I don't want anybody else. I want you. I've been preparing you for this moment. You don't have to feel ready and you don't have to feel qualified. You have what you need. Trust the fact that I know that you have everything that you could ever need for this assignment, especially when you think about these men and the fact that God said that, or like scripture shows us that they didn't add a single thing to it. They did it exactly as God instructed. I think that we walk through our day-to-day thinking that we're just not enough, especially when it's for God and it's intended to be something that feels so big. They didn't let the intimidation and the fear of not being enough let them stop them from some of God's most important work. Like this tabernacle was a dwelling place of his presence. It allowed him to be with the Israelites through to the promised land. And it's something that if they would have let that fear and doubt settle in, it wouldn't have been in the way, they wouldn't have been able to execute it in the way that God needed them to. So it's like sometimes we have to just get out of our own heads and just do. Don't add more to it. Just do. And so I also think too, I know I said this, but we tend to think that the assignment shows up first, and then we have to like be willing to offer and walk into the obedience. God places the desires on our heart. It's already there. Like, yes, we have to walk in obedience in it. But the desires of your heart, in our garden session yesterday, I was talking about this. So if some of you ladies were on here or on there yesterday, you'll know what I mean. But so often we walk through and we feel like, I don't know what God is calling me to. I know that there's something, but I don't know how to use my life experience, all of these things that I've been given, and make it into something. And God's like, it's not up to you to decide what it is. Oh, it's okay, Carol. It's not up to you to decide what it is. I already have it planned out. But the desires that are on your heart, I place them there. Lean into those, right? We tend to think that our acceptance comes first and then the assignment. It's not that at all. We do need to walk into it, right? God's not going to force us into it, but the calling has already been there. Okay, the calling is already there. So, if you guys just came in, we're only through verse 2 in Exodus 36. Okay, and if you're new here, I want to welcome you. You guys can put that in the chat. We want to welcome you in. We want to get to know you by name. I need to move my chair, and my chair gets stuck on my blanket all the time. So it might not work. And then I have a rug under here. It's probably easier if I just go like this. Okay, so good morning as you guys are coming in. Yep, the calling is already there. The calling is already there, and it cannot be taken away. God's plan will always come to be. Good morning. Your friend is asking. Your friend is asking what, Mary? So, I want to tell you guys about a little known fact before we get into verse 3. So, goodness gracious. All right, so I want you to look at these two names, right? I want to tell you what they actually mean. So, Beazel, it actually means the shadow of God. It's under his covering. Oliab actually means father's tent. So, the man whose own name carries the idea of standing in God's shadow, Beazel, he is the one chosen to build the place where God's presence will physically rest. Okay, this is the man whose name already means, like the man, Oliab, whose name already means tent. He's the one chosen to build a tent. Okay, so Beazel's name means God's shadow. He is the one that's chosen to build the place where God's presence will physically rest. And Oliab means tent. And he's the one that's designed to build the tent. Okay? Neither name was given in advance, knowing that this assignment was coming. Their parents named two ordinary baby boys generations before any of this. And the names ended up actually describing the exact work God called them to. I think that's so crazy how intentionally he works. So intentional. I don't know what any of your names mean. Well, I'm sure I know some of them. But do you guys know what your names mean? I've told you guys this before, and I've asked some of you before, but mine means butterfly. I've heard other people tell me what my name means. And it's they'll say other things, but the more common one is butterfly. Yours means child of God, victorious or undefeated. Yes, you can watch this on YouTube. At the bottom left of your screen, there's a gold icon, and it has the replays and that gift for you guys. Okay? You're not sure what your name means? You guys should look it up. Yours means moon goddess. Ooh, love that. Yeah, mine means butterfly. So if you guys haven't looked it up, just for fun. Oh, yours means judged by God? Interesting. Okay. So I just find it interesting how intricately he works sometimes. I almost wonder if they needed that reminder or if they even knew what their name meant. Because sometimes I think that, like, our names, obviously, I think it's free will by our parents when they name us, but if we need that reminder from him to say, like, you are the one, you were made for this. I just love that it ended up describing the work that God had called them to do. So in Exodus 36, verse 3, I just Googled it. I think you can just Google it. Like, for those of you guys that have kids, did you choose the name of your child just because you liked it? Or did you choose it because it was trending? Or because of the meaning surrounding it? So when we chose both of our boys' names, so I have Zane and I have Wes. And I always went back in and tried to look, first of all, boy names. I don't know any of you boy moms if you've struggled with this, but boy names I feel like are so hard. They're so hard. I had like a million little girl names. If we had a little girl, which we're done having kids, but if we were to have a little girl, I was going to name, her middle name was going to be Lily or Lillian because my grandmother's middle name was Lillian. And so I wanted to do that in remembrance of her. My grandma actually passed away 2 months before I had my youngest. And so I had known that she wasn't going to, I had hoped that she would get to meet him, but I knew there was always that possibility. So when we found out we were pregnant, I was like, I want to name her if we have a girl. And I had told her that. And then obviously she knew we had a boy. But when I picked out Wes, so my son's name is Zane. He's our oldest. And his middle name is Matthew. So it's Zane Matthew. And so he has his dad's first name. His middle name is his dad's first name. And then our Wes, he goes by Wesley. And his name is Wesley. And it was funny because when we were naming him, I was like, his full name will be Wesley, but I'm not going to call him Wesley. He's just going to be Wes. And now I almost only call him Wesley. I mean, I call him both, but I call him like Wesley just as much as I call him Wes. And his middle name is John. And his middle name is John because my dad's name is John, and Matt's grandfather's name is John, and his dad's middle name is John. And so I try to pick out names that have like meaning in them, like family meaning in them, especially with little boys. So I don't know that I necessarily, Esme, oh my gosh, that's cute. I don't know that I picked them out. They weren't like, they weren't like biblical names. I did try to look for them in scripture, and Zane actually means gift from God. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. Wes doesn't have it. I don't think it has any meaning in scripture, but I just like the names. So it's funny how names have such significance. But anyway, we'll go into Exodus 3, or verse 3, I should say, because I could talk to you guys all day. So, and they received from Moses all the offerings which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of making the sanctuary. So they continued bringing to him free will offerings every morning. Okay. I just Googled it. Where did you guys look up your name meanings? Sometimes when you look in the name database, I think it will tell you too, but I had just Googled it. So, with Exodus 3, I want to dive deeper into this part because it's actually, I don't know if it surprises any of you guys, but it did to me. So the text says that they keep bringing free offerings every single morning. So that means that they didn't just give their offering once or like another time because Moses asked because they needed more. They do it every single morning. They do it on their own, by their own free will. Nobody's like twisting their arm to do it. So the word for the work that the craftsmen were doing, the word in the original text, it's the exact same word that's used elsewhere in scripture for worship. So there's no separate category in their language for sacred labor and ordinary labor. The hands that were cutting wood and the hands that were raised in prayer were doing the same kind of thing. They were worshiping. That makes me think that like the work that we do day in and day out, it's God ordained. Even if we don't feel like what we're doing is in ministry or like an act of worship, what this is saying is that the work of their hands, that same language was used for sacred labor and ordinary labor. It was an act of worship. And so I think that makes me think, and I'm curious what you guys think about this element of it, but anything that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, like the work that we do, even if we don't like it, that can be an act of worship. Like I tell the women in the community all the time, like your business is your ministry. You stewarding your household, that's ministry, right? I want you to think about who is actually doing the giving here, though. This is not at all a wealthy nation. They don't have a surplus to spare. These are people who had over 400 years of forced labor. And they were considered, when they were in Egypt, they were considered like the lowest social class, right? They had no social standing. The jewelry that they had, all of these things that they had, they were given by the other Egyptians before they left in Exodus. And so they don't have a surplus to be giving. This is a camp 3 months out of slavery, and the gold and the linen that's showing up every single month, it's coming out of what little each person personally owns. Like nobody required this. God just said, give from the willingness of your heart. He didn't say an amount. He didn't qualify or disqualify anybody. He didn't say, like, the people that have the most have to give the most. He just said, give from the willingness of your heart. And here these people are showing up day after day, and they're finding more to give. The willingness in itself, that's the biggest piece. If you have ever wondered whether what you bring actually matters when it feels small compared to the size of like the work that you offer, like watch this camp. This is a camp who has almost nothing, and they keep showing up each and every morning offering something until somebody has to call it to a halt. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 1 through 5, Paul writes about churches with almost nothing who gave beyond what anybody expected people to give in their situation. And he says that they gave themselves first and then their resources second. That's the same exact thing that we're reading here. It's the willingness to show up before anybody ran the numbers of whether what they were giving made sense. So when we look in Exodus 4 and 5, it says, then all the craftsmen who were doing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work he was doing. And they spoke to Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work, which the Lord has commanded us to do. Okay, so when you read that, right, when you hear that, it's essentially saying that these craftsmen who are the ones, like, they're the ones who actually walk off the job to report this, not Moses. Moses isn't saying like, okay, I think you guys have enough. The people that are doing the work say this is more than what we need. The people with their actual hands on the material are the ones who would benefit the most from having like extra work to work with, are the ones saying like there's too much. There are some of us who have spent like our whole life believing that recognizing enough is somebody else's job, right? You wait for a boss or a spouse or a mentor or even like a number on your screen to tell you that the things that you have done are sufficient. Most of the time, nobody comes to tell you that, right? How many of you in your day to day, you were getting the kids ready, you packed lunches, you made breakfast, you got them dressed, and then your significant other comes up to you and says, "Thanks, babe, you've done enough." No, you just keep going, right? You keep getting them ready, you keep doing the things. Or when you're at work, right? Does your boss say, "Good job today. You've done enough. You can go home"? If it's happened, it doesn't happen very often, right? Most of the time we're I don't know that we're waiting for somebody to say like enough's enough, but more so like we just keep going just because that's what we've been trained to do. We just keep going until the work is done. But like, I think that most of the time nobody comes. So we just keep on going, and we're mistaking the absence of a stop sign for like a green light. Like, nope, nobody said stop, so I'm just going to keep on going. But look at who called this one. This was the man who was looking down at like a spreadsheet, right? The man that was looking at a spreadsheet, he stayed silent. But the people that were actually the closest to the work and had the most reason to want to have more material, probably not less. If any of you guys have done like, you're constructing something, laborious work, landscaping, construction, you're making clothing, like anything. When it requires materials, you probably want more than enough than just enough. They're the ones that spoke up first. That tells me that you don't need permission from above, like from God, or a boss or a spouse or anything like that, to recognize what's already in your hands. Sometimes the clearest read on whether it's enough or not, it comes from the person standing right inside the work, which might actually be you. Sometimes you can look at things and say, this is enough. I've done my part. So what's one thing that you've probably that you've been doing past the point that it actually needed you? Is that showing up and being that fixer? I tend to think of like that false burden that we talk about. The one that's taking on more than what's needed. Is it being a listening ear for other people? Is it doing too much in your household? Think about that, okay? So, we have watched this camp give so freely that the craftsman building the actual structure had to walk off the job and report it. But what's going to happen next is a part that I think that most people tend to not notice very much. It's this part where somebody actually does say stop. So in Exodus 36 verses 6 through 7, it says, "So Moses gave a commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed through the camp, saying, 'Let neither man nor woman do any more work for the offering of the sanctuary.' And the people were restrained from bringing, for the material that they had was sufficient for all the work to be done, indeed, too much." So what's happening is that in Hebrew, the word that's originally used means restrained. Okay, so every other time that this exact word has showed up in scripture, it's been describing something bad. It's kala. That's the word. Every time it's used anywhere else in scripture, it describes something bad, like rain that gets shut up, a blessing that gets withheld, like a drought. That's where it's used in other references. But here, it's the only time in the whole story that the word describes the opposite of a drought. It describes this overflow that had to be capped. So I want you to think about If the only time that you've ever heard the word stop was attached to someone, something running out, you've probably assumed that that meant to be held back. And that means a lack of something. Sometimes the text is saying otherwise. Sometimes you get stopped because there's already too much for your hands to even hold on to, not too little. So if somebody has ever told you, like, that's enough, that might not necessarily be a sign that you were being denied something. It might be a sign that you've already done what was asked of you, and what they're trying to do is protect you. I think a lot of times other people on the outside can say, like, are you doing okay? Or are you all right? And sometimes we think of that as a bad thing, right? We're like, no, I'm just doing what needs to be done. And sometimes they're saying, you're good, that's enough. Go rest. I'm protecting you from burnout. I'm protecting you from this version of yourself that takes on more than what they need to. I don't think that God needed this camp to keep proving themselves through this endless stream of gold. That's not at all what I believe that he was doing here in this moment. These people, right, had just committed like this sin against him. And I know that they felt shame and they felt guilt. I don't think that what he's doing is saying, prove yourself time and time and time again. He showed us that in scripture. That's not what he's doing. Them bringing like this endless need of gold, I think this first wave of giving probably was already sufficient to God. And then he let Moses call it finished when the offerings were still coming, like the next day. He could have done, like, God could have called it day one. He knew exactly what materials were needed. Moses knew exactly the amount that was needed. Think about what that means about how God actually operates. He is not the kind of God who keeps running this ledger on our lives or like our devotion to him, just watching to see how much more that we're going to hand over before he decides when it really means that it's time, or like waiting to see if this round of obedience holds up better than the last one did. This camp, they built a golden calf a few chapters before this. And this is the same camp that he's saying, what you have right now is sufficient enough. There's no extended trial period that's going to be attached to this. Like, what you're giving is enough. He already knows what's in your hands is enough. He's more interested in in you putting it down than watching you keep handing it over and over and over again just to prove it. Like to prove something that he settled a long time ago. Right? There's things that maybe we feel sorry for. We've wronged someone, we've hurt someone, we've severed a relationship. Maybe we feel like that with God. Right? And our earthly relationships, we tend to, the mindset is usually, prove yourself more before I can trust you again. Do more, earn it back, right? That's not what God says. He's not watching over us and telling us to prove it time and time and time and time again. He settled it a long time ago because he already knew. He already knew what was gonna come of it, and he already knew the posture of your heart. Okay, so there's a reference in Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. God actually tells his people to test him with their giving, and then he promises a blessing. Like a blessing is going to be poured out until there's no more room left to receive it. That is the overflow that we see in Exodus 36. It's not an accident in this story. It's the pattern. So essentially when God supplies the willingness, it tends to outrun whatever was being built to hold it. We see that happen when God goes to be with, or Jesus, when he performs his first miracle, well, with the water and the wine, when he was at the wedding, when he turned that water into wine, he gave them more than what they needed. It was an abundance. It was so much And that to me, I was like, that is, it made me cry in that moment because I was like, the beauty of God to say, I'm not just going to give you what you need, I'm going to give you more than what you need. He tends to give us so much that it overflows, even if we don't recognize it or even if it doesn't feel like it in that moment. So I'm curious, and I'm going to ask you guys to either drop a 1 or a 2, okay? Yes, it is not an outlier, it is the pattern. So, can you drop a 1 if you've been waiting for someone to tell you that you've done enough? And can you drop a 2 if you are somebody who's already figured out how to call it yourself? There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious where you guys kind of sit. 1, if you've been waiting for somebody to tell you that it's enough. Or 2, you've figured it out and you know how to do it on your own. Yay for 2s and 1s, but yay for those of you. That's good. It's good either way, right? I think that either one, you're giving from the willingness of your heart. You're learning now, so you're a 2. Yeah. It's really hard. I mean, do you guys think it's, for those of you that put 2, was it hard for you to get to that point? Or is that something that you've just naturally become good at? Thank you, Lisa. I am now, I think I'm a 2. But I think that it was hard for me. It's not about the fact that I can't set boundaries. I think it's more that I just want to give. Like it's second nature to me to just want to give, because when I let you in, I just want to give you any and everything. Like my time, I'll help you pay bills. Like I want to help in any way that I can. And sometimes it's hard for me to set that line to say, hey, girl, you've done enough, right? Because it never feels like it's enough for some reason. Yeah, like you serve and serve. I think that, and there's no, like, to me, there's nothing wrong one way or the other. But I think that's why it's hard for me, because naturally I just want to do that. And it feels like I'm going to let somebody down. Or like, how do I leave them if they need me? I don't want to leave them. Then I get all sad. Or like, I don't want to let them figure it out on their own. If I could make it easier, then I want to. That's usually where I'm at with that. But it is hard. At least I think it was for me. I know a lot of you said that it was for you too, but oh my gosh. You gave 3 free cars to your sisters. See, I think there's an element of that too. That we tend to like give so freely, and then sometimes people don't recognize it. And that kind of shields your heart, and it kind of, I don't want to say it hardens your heart, but I think it creates a boundary sometimes. I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but the number one thing that I've learned is like, don't change the goodness of your heart just because of how other people have treated you. Like, yes, learn to pick and choose, right? Like, don't just give to any and everybody if it's going to enable them or like harm them. Like, it's not going to be beneficial to them. But like, don't change who you are just because other people don't recognize it. Continue to be that amazing version of yourself. Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, those instances, it does. It's hard not to harden your heart in that. So if you guys are just coming in, I had asked a question, and we're just kind of diving into that. I had asked whether you're like number 1, like you're somebody who's been waiting for somebody to tell you that you've done enough, or if you're 2 and you've already figured out how to call it on your own. So that's what we're answering. And if you guys are new here, or you're just popping in this morning and you're settled in the room, or maybe you've been watching for a little bit, can you say good morning or hi? We want to get to know you. I know a lot of you guys kind of listen in the background. Some of you, I don't even think you tap into the live. We want to get to know you. I love knowing the people in the community. I try my best to like know you. Not like know you, but like talk with you and get to know you and this be like a little family and a community. We want to welcome you into that. I want to say this too. I think that sometimes, well, I struggle with this. I don't know if any of you do. And on the call yesterday, our garden session, one of the ladies said that she just really struggles with finding a community that she can like let her like to be vulnerable with, and that are other women of faith. And it's not, I think the thing that I really crave in communities is like the real version of people. So like sometimes you will get that part of me that's like, I'm like, what are you guys doing? There is, Veronica. I will send it. Well, I'll send you the details of it since you're in our community, like the Eden and Empire community. But like, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what did you have for dinner? How's your morning going? Like, I'm not asking for engagement. I'm genuinely curious. Like, I want a community of women where, yes, we talk about faith, but I want to know you as a woman. Like, there's so many parts to you, right? Like, some of you are moms, some of you are women on your own, some of you are, empty nesters, some of you are in the trenches like me with young children. Like, I just want to connect with you. And yes, we'll talk about faith. But I told you guys yesterday, right? So we have our Discord chat. So if any of you ladies want to be a part of that, you absolutely can. I will invite you to it. This chat is just us just chatting about like as friends. Like we're all over the world. But like I want to talk to you about the silly things I find. Like yesterday I told you guys that I was on my way to like yes, Carolyn, I do want to invite you to that. I went to go invite you and I'm like, where's Carolyn at? And I was like searching for your name. Can you DM me? I was like, where can I don't know. I don't know why I couldn't pop up. So perk with the oil change. I drive a 2003 Yukon Denali, and I'm only telling you that just so you guys have reference. But with the Yukon Denali, they had this recall, and I think Chevy just has recalls all the time sometimes. Or not Chevy, GMC has recalls all the time with some of their stuff. If you guys want to be a part of the Discord chat, will you DM me? It's actually easy for you guys to DM me, only because sometimes I'll go to click on your stuff and then I can't find you. But anyway, it had a recall on it, and I was going to just only get an oil change because I so badly needed an oil change. My poor Denali was like, girl, please change me. And so I went in, planned to do that, and they were like, actually, you need to fix this recall because it's with your engine. You're going to waste money on an oil change because they're going to change your oil again anyway. Yeah, we're just girls. And my Yukon was like screaming at me. It's like, please get your oil changed now. Anyway, I got a free oil change because they did it with the recall. So it went great. And it only was like an hour and a half to do all of those things. Isn't it the best feeling when something's like on your to-do list and you so badly need to get it done, but you feel like you don't have time to do it, and then you get it done? It's like the best feeling. I'm like, yes. I'm like that with anything, like with oil changes or like my car and having to go to the post office. Like, oh, and my Amazon returns. I let my Amazon returns pile up. And then I go in and do my returns, and there's like 10 of them. And I swear, each and every time I go in, it's always the same guy. And I have like 7 returns, and he's like, ugh. I'm the worst with that. But it was really nice to get that done. Anyway, that is all to say, I talked to you guys about silly little things like that, and how my car, I was driving it, and I was driving it and my son and I get in the car yesterday. I'm like, man, it smells like something crawled in here and went to be with God. Like it stinks in here. And what do you guys think it was? I'm going to let you guess what you think was in my car. My mom guessed it right away, surprisingly. You guys have to guess what you think was in my car. Leftovers? That would be a good guess. And if you guys know, don't say it. A rotten orange? That's so random. A potato? That's hilarious. A bottle? You know, actually all of those things would be very valid. Thank goodness it wasn't a squirrel. I don't even know what I would do. No, so I do pickup orders. Socks. That would be very valid too. A diaper. That one would be more so. I could see all of those things being in my car right now. Like when I would carry purses, I would also like take snacks in there. Most of the time what's in my purses is just snacks. So all of those things would be very valid. One time there was like a sandwich in there. I go to do pickup orders at Target and I thought I didn't get ground beef. And found 2 pounds of ground beef in my car and I was like, man, it was stinky. Thank goodness I found it. And that was right before my oil change. And I was like, of the times, right? And it's hot here in Nebraska. It was nasty. But to my defense, you guys, the reason why is sometimes when I go to do pickup orders, I have like this little cubby and like I drive like the longer version of a Denali. And so sometimes it gets way back there and I always try to check, but I'm very short. Oh my gosh, that side did that too. My sister's, her girlfriend, she left, I had asked her to get chicken and she left it in her car all night. We do that with me. I'm actually only 5'2". Sorry, you guys, I know we're way off topic, but anyway, I left it in my Denali and I have this like 3-compartment cubby and it was all the way in the back. And so sometimes they'll put it in those little compartments and I try my best to check them, but like I didn't realize it was in there. I was so disappointed because I needed that ground beef and ground beef is so expensive. But I'm glad I found it before I went and did my oil change because I always get so embarrassed when they go into my car. It's not awful right now, but I have young boys and I'm always like, oh, I pray that they don't think I drive like the nastiest car. You forgot a roll of dog food from the grocery store order once. Yes. Okay. Thank you guys for making me feel like not such a gross person for not realizing there was ground beef in my car. So, oh, a gerbil. Oh, that's awful. My husband has had a mouse drive up into, so he has 2 trucks. He has his like everyday truck and his work truck. And he's had a mouse crawl into his, they like to nest in parts of your vehicles. So yeah, we've had that too. They're stinky. All right, guys. You can keep going in the chat though. I could sit here and just chat with you guys all day. But this is the kind of stuff we do in our Discord chat. So if you all want to be a part of it, please DM me. I'd love to add you. I never get annoyed. Hopefully the other ladies don't ever get annoyed, but I love seeing your messages come through. I love it. Sometimes I need to get caught up. Like right now, Erica sent some beautiful tumblers. I think that's what they were in the chat. And I saw them. I just need a comment. So a 10-piece chicken nugget. That's funny. All right. If you guys are just coming in, we're just side chatting. We're in Exodus 36. And so I want to welcome you guys in. If you're new, I also have a gift for you. On the bottom left of your screen, there is our new live viewer thank you gift. I should think of like a shorter name. And then there is also the replays for all of our studies. There is as well our Hearing God Through the Noise challenge. I need to switch it over to day 2. So if you guys can like remind me, so that actually I should just do it now because some of you guys will need to opt in because you have to leave earlier. And so what that is it's a 3-day challenge. And within that, if I send you the replays for that. So you don't have to watch it live, but give me 1 second. Sometimes I can't talk and do this. I forget what I'm doing. So let's see. Day 2. I just needed to make sure that day 2 was on there. Day 1 was still on there. So you guys should see the new live viewer thank you, as well as the replays. And then the day 2 of Hearing God Through the Noise challenge should be on there. And if any of you have taken it before, I plan to just send you a recap or just one email with all of them in there with the updated stuff. So, okay. Can you guys hear the music now? You have a lot of spiders in your car? Oh my gosh. I don't think I would drive anywhere if that happened. That'd be like a fear of mine. Okay. We'll get back into it. So if you guys are just slipping in right now, good morning. We're in Exodus 36 verses 8 through 9 is where I'm going to go with it. So, then all the gifted artisans among them who worked on the tabernacle made 10 curtains woven of fine linen and of blue, purple, and scarlet thread with artistic designs of cherubim that they had made. You know what? I know I keep getting sidetracked, but I think I'm actually going to show you the pictures so you guys can see it. So give me just a second. I'm going to go back to our Discord chat and I'm going to show you the one that Cindy put in there if I could find it. Give me just a second. Maybe I'm scrolling too. Oh, there it is. I'm going to save it and put it in here so you guys can envision what we're talking about. She made it specifically for this study. So thank you. Let's see if I, goodness gracious, if you could see my screen right now, it's such a mess. It just pulled up like 10 tabs all at once. I'm going to airdrop it. I think I received it. All right. Oh my goodness. My mouse is literally not cooperating. Thanks for being patient with me, you guys. All right. Can you see this little guy down here? All right. Can you see this? Can you see the curtains? I don't know how big I need to make it. This is also hard to do. All right. We're going to... Goodness gracious. It did come out so good. It's so beautiful. I feel like as beautiful as like this looks, it's probably even more intricate and just stunning in person. So anyway, these are the tabernacle curtains and they're woven of fine linen and blue and purple and scarlet thread. And they have artistic designs of cherubim that they made with them. So the length of each curtain was 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain was 4 cubits, and the curtains were all the same size. And he coupled 5 curtains to one another, and the other 5 curtains he coupled to one another. And he made loops of blue yarn. Can you guys see the blue yarn? It's literally so far away, so I can't tell. They are so fancy. But it says that he made loops of blue yarn on one edge of the curtain, on the I don't know what this word is. Sheveled of one side. Likewise, he did on the outer edge of the other curtain of the second set. You know what though? As I'm reading this kind of reminds me of like, I almost feel like God is proud of the work that was done. Do you read it as that? I know that God instructed them, But the fact that it's here in the Bible and God is going through such intricate detail of of it being described, of like, obviously we need to know what it looks like, but I almost hear it as God being like, and this is how he did it, right? Like, and he made loops of blue yarn on the edge of the curtain. Likewise, he did on the outer edge of the other curtain of the second set. And there were 50 loops that he made on one curtain, and 50 loops he made on the other edge of the curtain, on the edge of the second set. And the loops held one curtain to another. Right? That's what they looked like. And then he made 50 clasps of gold and coupled the curtains to one another with the clasps that might be one tabernacle. Okay, so I'm going to hide this for a second. And so what's happening right here is there were 10 curtains. Each one was cut to the exact same measurements. Every one of them was stitched with the same cherubim design. This was worked in by hand. This isn't 10 different artists doing 10 different interpretations. This is a level of precision that's repeated 10 times over, because the whole point is that these pieces would have to come together into something that reads as one continuous surface. This isn't patchwork. These are 82 cubits, worked out roughly about, it worked out to be about 42 feet. So 4 cubits is about 6 feet. And these 10 panels at that size, every single one of them is identical. So in this camp, they didn't have a factory, right? There was no machine cutting. Everything was by hand and thread. The scale of this alone, like, it's incredible. Like, before you even get to the detail of the cherubim, that the scale of just that alone would slow you down. So like, if you stop and just picture the actual labor here for a second, these cherubim, they were worked into linen by hand. I can't even draw a picture. How are you going to sew cherubim? How are you going to sew that? When you can't even see, it's massive. It's 42 feet, like 42 feet. And you not only did it once, but you did it twice. And they had to be to where they looked the same. Yes, if you DM me, I can send it to you. They had to look the same. Like, this individual, they had a skill that was so necessary for this. And God knew that when he designed, like, gave him the assignment. This person had to do this 10 times over, the exact same size, with no margin for error. You don't just like stop what you're doing and say, whoops, and then restart all over again. Do any of you sew? My grandma had a sewing machine, and I always loved when she would sew little things. She didn't do it all the time, but I always thought it was so cool. Like, I think it's so, I did it one time in like home ec, and I made like a pair of pants. Sewing anything with a needle and thread, I can't even like make my loops the same. I can't even fully close a knot. It just comes unraveled. Like, the sheer skill that was required to even attempt this, let alone finish it, that's amazing. God didn't lower his standards, though, for what he wanted. He didn't lower it. He wanted the best of the best for what he was building. He said, I'm calling in the best. I want this built in this exact specification, and I know the exact person to do this. The people doing it, they were recently enslaved shepherds and tent dwellers. He filled the tent with very specific people with the actual capacity to actually meet what he needed. So, embroidered thread is thicker than sewing thread. That's interesting. Sorry, I gotta move my legs. They're falling asleep. So, I wanted to give you guys a fun fact. If you guys didn't know this, I covered this before, but the dyes themselves, like the purple and the scarlet dye in this part of the ancient world, were not something that you just found very cheaply. The purple, it came from a specific, very specific sea snails. So you had to crush thousands of them to get a single ounce of dye. This dye was reserved for royalty exclusively. The scarlet, it came from a different costly source. And so the camp had been making bricks in Egypt just a few months earlier, Now they have enough of the most expensive dyed thread in the region to weave it into a curtain 10 times over at full size. That access, it didn't come from nowhere. It actually came out of Egypt it came from Egypt with them. I want you to think like now it's being unpicked apart from earrings and bracelets and woven into the walls of a tent for God. So when we get into Exodus 36 verses 10 through 13, it says, I'm like, where is that at? It's because I'm reading the wrong chapter. In 10 through 13, it spoke about the fact that he coupled the 5 curtains to one another. And then the other 5 curtains he coupled to one another. Then he made loops of blue yarn on the edge of the curtain. Likewise, he did on the outer edge of the other curtain of the second set. And there were 50 loops that he made on one curtain and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain on the end of the second set. And the loops held one curtain to one another, and he made 50 clasps of gold and coupled the curtains to one another with the clasps, that it might be one tabernacle. And so what this is basically describing is that it's becoming one tabernacle. And I think that's the most important piece, right? These are 10 separate curtains, and they're sewn in like 5 and 5. And they're joined by 50 gold clasps. And the text actually stops to tell you explicitly that the result is not 10 curtains arranged nicely. It's one structure. So in Ephesians, it's in Ephesians 2, verses 19 through 22. Paul actually describes believers as being built together into a dwelling place for God. Each one is joined to the next. That image actually isn't just a metaphor that was invented centuries later. It's the same picture that we're seeing here in Exodus 36 that gives us this physical form. There's a bunch of separate pieces, and each one is made with the same level of care. And they're joined by something that holds until the result stops being like so many things. It becomes one thing. So when we look at Exodus 14 through 18, it says, he made the curtains of goat's hair for the tent over the tabernacle. He made 11 curtains, and the length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, and the 11 curtains were the same size. He coupled 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves, and he made 50 loops on the edge of the curtain, that the outermost in one set, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain of the second set. He also made 50 bronze clasps to couple the tent together, that it might be one. And so in this part of it, there is like a second longer layer that goes over the first. So goat's hair this time is used instead of linen. And then they have bronze clasps instead of gold. So this layer isn't just like, this isn't the one that people admire. It's the protective layer, the protective covering that sits over the beautiful curtains. Let's see if we can see that on here. I don't know if you guys can envision this. Sorry, wrong image. Can you guys see that? I think it's this part right here. Maybe? What do you guys think it is? I can move. Oh, oops. Where did it go now? It like poofed away. Give me 1 second. Now I got to re-upload it. TikTok Studio is so picky sometimes. I haven't read the Book of Enoch, so I don't have an opinion on it. All right, is it over here, what it's describing? Let's see. He made curtains of goat hair for the tent over the tabernacle, and he made 11 curtains. I think it's probably these ones. I know you guys can't see where I'm pointing. The ones to the far left, would you say that's what those are? Sorry, guys, my chair's so loud. You guys probably didn't even hear anything, but my chair's so noisy sometimes. All right, so I think, yeah, it would be those ones. Because it says that it's a protective covering. And he made curtains of goat hairs for the tent over the tabernacle. That would be my assumption, is that. So I'll leave that up so you guys don't have to look at me. This layer is the protective layer, or the protective covering that essentially sits over the beautiful inner curtains. And it's taking the weather of the elements, essentially, so that the detailed work underneath it doesn't have to. So a fun fact about goat hair and their tents is that actually was the standard shelter material for the entire region. So this is the kind of fabric that every family in the camp would have recognized from their own dwellings. This is the most ordinary weather-resistant material available, and it was assigned to protect the most detailed, costly material in this whole structure. So this plain, like the plain layer's entire purpose was to make sure that the beautiful layer underneath it survived. Then it goes on in verse 19. It goes on to say that then he made a covering for the tent of ram skins, dyed red, and a covering of badger skins above that. Yeah, I can do that. I can include that in the when I send you guys the replays. So I'm trying to figure out how I should do that. I think I can just send it in the email in and of itself. So thank you for asking that. So now there's going to be 2 more layers on top of the two that we had already covered. So there's going to be a total of 4 layers now in total protecting this structure before you even get near to the design. So nothing about this design assumes that the valuable parts can actually fend for themselves in the open. It's so intricate and so detailed that God wants it to be protected. So before we go into the frame in and of itself, we have just watched the camp get told to stop giving. We've watched everything that they gave get folded into these curtains, and they're joined so completely that the text calls it one tabernacle. Now we're going to get into what actually holds it up. Okay. At the bottom left of your screen, there's a gold icon. And if any of you need the replays, there's an option that says replay. If you go ahead and opt into that, I'll send you the replays for not just today, but all that we've covered so far in our studies. So in verses 20 through 21, it goes on to say, for the tabernacle, he made boards of acacia wood, standing upright, and the length of each board was 10 cubits, and the width of each board 1.5 cubits, and each board had 2 tenons for binding one another. So acacia wood, just to remind you guys, it actually grows in harsh, dry ground. It's the kind of tree that actually survives where almost nothing else does. So the people didn't import something very rare and then this be like a decorative frame of God's dwelling place. They used the wood that was already there, and it was already proven that it was going to be able to stand in these difficult conditions. So when we go into verses 22 through 30, it says each board had 2 tenons for binding one and guys, I cannot read today. I don't know why. Each board had 2 tenons for binding one to another. Thus he made all the boards of the tabernacle, and he made boards for the tabernacle, 20 boards for the south side. 40 sockets of silver he made to go under the 20 boards, and 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. And for each side of the tabernacle, the north side, he made 20 boards. And there 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards. For the west side of the tabernacle, he made 6 boards. And he also made 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the tabernacle. And they were coupled at the bottom and coupled together at the top by 1 ring. Thus he made both of them for the 2 corners. So there were 8 boards and their sockets, 16 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards. So there's 40 silver sockets here, more for like the other sides, and then 100 sockets total. So once you count, like 100 sockets are in total for all of this once you count the walls of this structure. So each board, it stands upright because it's set into 2 of these. It's not just resting on the ground, but it's anchored into something solid below it. Okay, so if you guys just run the math with me for a little bit, we're doing a lot of like numbers and calculations in this part of Exodus, but if we run the math, so there's 20 boards on the south side. I'm going to pull this image up again. Okay, there's 20 boards on the south side, and then there is 20 on the north side, and there's 8 more across the back, and every single one needs 2 sockets underneath it. So that's exactly 100 silver sockets. And they each line up precisely with the 100 talents of census of the silver that we're going to see in Exodus 38. Exodus 38, it actually goes on to tell us that the silver is going to be used for this. So it's saying that nothing was left over. Nothing came up short. The amount of ransom money that's collected later on, I know we haven't gone into this part, but I'll reference it again, but I just need you to see it here. The amount of ransom money that's collected, it matches the exact number of sockets needed down to the very last one. Okay? I think the thing that most of us never really learn about silver, at least I hadn't, Exodus 38, it actually tells us exactly where it came from. So back in chapter 30, every single man at the camp who was 20 years old and older, they were required to pay a half a shekel as ransom money during the census. I don't know if you guys remember that piece of it. We went over that in Exodus 30, okay? They were required to pay a half a shekel as ransom money during this as an atonement for his own life. So the rich were required to give no more, and the poor were required to give no less than anybody else. That payment, it was an identical payment from every single person in this camp. And then it actually got melted down and cast into the sockets that these boards are literally standing on right now. So every single wall of God's dwelling place, it's being held up by something that was already paid for. And each person equally paid the same amount, to the point that there was nothing left to prove about their own worth once they made the payment. He said, I don't care if you have a surplus of money or you have less. Each person is going to give the same amount. You're not like, he's essentially saying that your worth isn't determined, it doesn't determine the payment amount. Okay, so this acacia wood that we spoke about, it's surviving harsh ground with gold overlay, and every one of these boards is cut from wood that already proved that it could survive on its own. Each one gets overlaid in gold before it's ever set into place. So this thing that had already survived, it became the thing that got glorified. And I think the order is really important here, because the survival came first, right? And then the gold came after as recognition, not as the reason why the wood was worth using. When we look at what God did before the camp ever asked, like this ransom money, it ended up being used in these sockets. It was collected back in chapter 30. It was months before anybody even knew about this tabernacle, right? It was before anybody even broke ground with any of these boards. Beazel wasn't even named as the one that was going to do all of this. This was before the gold actually started being poured in for the curtains. God had the foundations of this structure provided for and accounted for before this structure even existed. Before they even knew that they needed any of this stuff. Every man in this camp, he paid his half shekel not knowing what would eventually hold it up. He just obeyed the instruction that was given to him, and God turned that obedience into the exact floor that this whole tent would later stand on. I think that shows us who God is, right? He is not a God that waits to see whether we are going to come up short before he decides that he's going to provide for you. Like he's not assuming anything. He's not like going behind you and building the foundation in real time while you wait to see if it's going to hold up. The floor was poured and the silver was counted in the same way for us before we even stood on the ground that we're at right now. So when we look into Exodus 36 verses 31 through 34, it tells us that, and he made bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards on the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the tabernacle on the far side westward. And he made the middle bar to pass through the boards from one end to another. He overlaid the boards with gold, made their rings of gold to be holders for the bars, and overlaid the bars with gold. And he made a veil of blue, purple, and scarlet thread and fine woven linen. It was worked with an artistic design of cherubim. Okay. There's like a lot of repetition in here. And so essentially what's happening is that the bars are running horizontally through the rings, and they're tying every upright board to the ones on either side of it. So no board, like no single board stands alone, no matter how solid its own sockets are. The structure only holds because the boards are physically connected to one another side by side the whole way around. So the tenons that they talk about, each board had 2 tenons, and they were carved pegs, and they were cut directly into the wood itself. They were fitted down into 2 sockets below. The board, it wasn't lowered onto the silver and then left to balance. It was actually shaped so specifically to interlock with what was below it. So the fit was engineered. It wasn't accidental. So every single one of these boards, we just spoke about each and every one of them earlier. Okay. So when we get to verses 35 through 36, it says that he made a veil of blue, purple, and scarlet thread and the fine woven linen. It was worked with an artistic design of a cherubim, and he made it 4 pillars, and he made for it 4 pillars of acacia wood and overlaid them with gold, with their hooks of gold, and he cast 4 sockets of silver for them. This veil, it was woven with the same level of the cherubim detail as the inner curtains that we started with, right? The same materials, the same skill, and the same amount of care. The difference of this is the location. So this piece, it hangs in the part of the room that almost no one ever walked into. So I want you to think about the actual time and skill that we spoke about earlier of how much time it would take to weave these cherubim into the veil. They did this knowing in advance that only the high priest once a year would ever be the one that was close enough to study this in detail. So most of the work that you're seeing in this, it gets its care calibrated into how visible it will be. This veil, though, it got the exact same level of craftsmanship as the curtains did. And those curtains, everybody would eventually see, right? They're on the outer part of the tabernacle. The veil, though, essentially nobody would see it. So when you look into Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, this was after Adam and Eve were sent out of the garden. God places cherubim at the entrance to guard the way, like their way back in. So essentially, generations later, the only place in Scripture the cherubim show up again in any kind of guarding role, it's actually woven directly into this veil. And this veil is stationed at the entrance to the one room where God's presence actually rests on earth. Okay? This image that's guarding the way out of Eden is the same image that's now guarding the way back into God's presence. So the road that was closed in Genesis is actually the road that this veil is already pointing to, being reopened. That's crazy to me. So when we look into Exodus 37 through 38, it says that he also made a screen for the tabernacle. the tabernacle door of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen made by a weaver, and its 5 pillars with their hooks, and he overlaid their capitals and their rings with gold, but their 5 sockets were bronze. Good morning to you guys coming in. Okay, so this is the last piece. This is the entrance screen. This is the same rich materials as everything else, but these sockets, they were made of bronze instead of silver. So even the metal grade, it changes depending on what part of the structure that you're looking at. So the more valuable material was used, the closer that you get anywhere to God's presence. So the closer you got, the more valuable each of the materials used was. So in Exodus 40, when we get there, it's going to actually tell us that the finished tabernacle, it got raised up on the first day of the 2nd year after leaving Egypt. That actually means that everything in this chapter, be it the curtains, the boards, the veil, the entire structure, it came together in well under a year. And it's built by people who were still living as nomads. Okay, they were going from place to place all the time. They're still eating manna every morning. They're still figuring out how to function as a free nation for the first time in their lives. The scale of what was just finished, like what they end up finishing on that kind of timeline under those conditions, is incredible. To build something to that magnitude, to that level of intricate detail, I think is so beautiful. So when we started the study this morning, I asked you guys to either answer yes or no, right? I asked you if you've ever just kept going on something long after it was already finished because nobody even told you that it was okay to stop. The part that I want you guys to walk away with today is that this camp in Exodus 36, they didn't stop giving because it ran dry. They actually got stopped because they had already done enough. And these people, the people that were closest to the work day in and day out, they were the ones who recognized it first. They said it out loud. They were like, please stop giving. Sometimes that person never shows up for us, though. And what we hold on to and the unseen work, that's real. It's hard sometimes. But I think that what Exodus 36 shows me is that it's okay to be the one who notices that it is enough on your own. Like you can be that one to point to yourself and say, I've done enough. The work that I've done is sufficient. Because remember those boards that we just talked through, right? This wood that was used, it was already proven that it could survive on its own before anybody ever covered it in gold. That silver below it, it was already paid in full by somebody else's identical payment before that board ever stood up. The bars, they tied every single piece to the one next to it so that no single board was bearing the whole weight of it on its own. None of that structure exists because one person kept pouring or one person moved past the point that was needed. It exists because at some point, the people that were closest to the work said, this is enough. This is exactly as it needs to be. And they built with that. They built with what was already there. And when we look at the names, Beazel and Oliab, like Beazel is the shadow of God, right? And Oliab was the Father's tent. And these two men, they were given their names long before they were even born, not long before they were ever born. Well, yeah, I think God gave them those names truly, but long before this assignment came to be, right? Long before anybody even knew that they were going to be asked to build this structure. These names ended up fitting them so exactly, right? And the cherubim, these are the cherubim that are guarding the way out of Eden in Genesis. Then they're woven straight into the veil, guarding the way back into God's presence here. So that road, it closed a long time ago, but it is the same road that this whole structure has already started to point back towards. And the same the same gold that this camp once melted into something that I want to say almost nearly destroyed them. This is the same gold that ended up holding up the tabernacle. Nothing that you've already given has been wasted. Even the parts of you that gave too much. It's already become the structure. God is not a God who wastes anything. So for some of us, there are pieces of it that we need to put down. We have already given enough. We don't have to keep picking it back up. We don't have to wait for someone to tell us that enough is enough, or that the work that you've done today is sufficient. Okay? We're going to go into our prayer. We pray out this study each and every day, and then we're going to go through our Hearing God Through the Noise Challenge Day 2. So I invite you guys to stay with me during that. But I want to know what you guys are praying for God to move through. It could be the same one that you put at the beginning of the live if you were on. And if you're joined us later, you can just put one word, because we know that God knows all of the details. Okay? God knows each and everything that we are going through. So we're going to pray out this part. Yes. And if you guys want to get the replays for the study, it's at the bottom left of your screen, and there's a gold icon. You can get the replays for the Bible study, the part that we just covered. You can pray or get the recap for the Hearing God Through the Noise Challenge. And if you're new here, you can get that gift. Okay, but we're going to pray. Thank you, God, for today. Thank you for showing us a piece of your heart. Thank you for allowing us to see how intricately you move in our lives, that you care about every single detail, that no matter how much we may fall short, no matter how much we may pull away from you, that you are always right there for us. Thank you for seeing us as worthy. Thank you for seeing us worthy of your presence, Father. Thank you for giving us this word today. I pray that it brings a comfort knowing that there are things that we may pick up and we try to take over, and sometimes you remind us that what we do is sufficient, that the work and the care and the detail that we put into things, that we don't always need to go above and beyond. I pray that each and every person on this live and the comments that they put in here, that they know that you see each and everything that we go through and you know it intimately. I pray that you bless them, Father, and thank you for your word. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right, you guys. We're going to go through our Hearing God Through the Noise Challenge here in just a second. We're going to be in Exodus 39 tomorrow. 37 tomorrow. I'm debating on whether to combine some of these together, so we'll at least be in 37 tomorrow. We'll do that. And that one in Exodus 37, this is it's making the ark of the testimony. Okay, so we'll dive into that one. My brain is just like glitching right now. I go live at 9 a.m. Central, and so I hope to see you guys then. We're going to get into our Hearing God Through the Noise Challenge, so I invite you guys to stay if you haven't done this challenge. If you have, and you want the updated version of it as of last week, I invite you to stay for that as well. So you guys have a beautiful day for those of you that are hopping off, and we'll get into day 2 of that challenge. Let me just get it pulled up really quick. Let's see. All right. All right, so our Hearing God Through the Noise Challenge is a 3-day challenge. I do it every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So if you guys need the replays from day 1, I will send it to you. You'll receive it today. You'll also receive the replays for day 2 and day 3. So you'll get all of the days. You'll get day 3 tomorrow. You also get reminders if you guys want to watch it with us live and participate. So this is definitely a participation event. If you guys were here with me yesterday, you're going to take hold of the things that you learned, and we're going to do our counters today. So if my mouse would cooperate with me. That would be amazing. Right now, it just keeps getting stuck. And it's not letting me click on anything. Oh, goodness gracious. All right. So yesterday, we were in day 1, and we learned all about the interference patterns. We named what has been running, like the things that we've come into agreement with. Today, we're actually going to learn what to do when it shows up. Okay. So the insight in and of itself, it doesn't necessarily just move you. Knowing the name of a pattern, it doesn't simply stop it. What stops it is actually having somewhere for it to go when the interference shows up, and it gives you a specific response that interrupts that interference before your biology and those strongholds carry that delay the rest of the way. So a lot of times as we're walking on assignment, what ends up happening is these interference patterns tend to come in, and they tell us like, we're not good enough, that the other woman started ahead of us, so there's no need for us to walk in our assignment. There's a better version out there, right? Whatever the interference pattern was that you guys named, we're going to get the counters today. So if you went through this challenge before, you are definitely welcome to do it again. And if you were here yesterday, you guys take a hold of what your primary was. And if you're just joining today, you are right on time. I don't know why my brain is so slow today. It's just like not working. I'm like in sloth mode, okay? So, Paul says in Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So the renewing of your mind, it's not simply positive thinking, okay? In Greek, this word actually means a complete renovation from the inside. So what Paul is doing is he's connecting it to the proving of the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So the renewed mind is actually not just a healthier mind. It's a mind that can discern what God is actually saying versus what this interference in your mind is generating. So these counters today, they're not affirmations. Each one is a specific reorientation back to who God is at the exact point that this interference is trying to introduce noise. That reorientation is actually what interrupts these strongholds long enough for the obedience to happen. So the way that this works long term is because of neuroplasticity, okay? So your brain actually rewires itself based on these repeated patterns of thought and response. So the interference that shows up that you identified yesterday, they're not just spiritual strongholds. They're actually well-worn neural pathways. So what happens is your brain fires them almost automatically right now. So every single time you tend to think like, I'm going to walk into what God has called me through, and then an excuse comes up, those interference patterns that we named, like you don't feel like you are qualified enough for it, or that you're too old to start a new business, or you can't apply for that job because you don't have the right qualifications, or you need to take on more from your family, whatever that is, it's become so ingrained in your mind because of these neural pathways, because you've repeated them time and time again, that your brain fires them automatically now. So every single time you use these counters that I'm going to give you, you're beginning to build a new neural pathway. So the brain strengthens in whatever gets used. The Holy Spirit renews the mind, and obedience is what retrains the brain. You actually need both of them. So when I spoke to you yesterday, there was a primary, a secondary, and a background. Okay? The secondary one, the secondary thought, this one comes after that initial thought, and that's usually what keeps you stuck. Okay? So the secondary, it's been running longer and it's been hiding deeper in your mind. So it means that the secondary, the counter that we're going to give it, it requires you to use it more consistently before it feels natural to you. That is not a reason to give up on using it. It's a reason to practice consistently inside of a container that actually holds the consistency that this rewiring requires. So I want to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how loud is the noise in your mind today? Is it a 1, like you barely hear it? Or is it a 10? It's super loud. I feel like you guys are just very quiet in the chat in general today. Okay. So, what we're going to be doing today is you're going to walk away with 2 counters. You're going to have one for your primary and one for your secondary, okay? This primary one is what you're going to use the moment that those thoughts tend to enter into your mind, because it's going to stop the entry. The secondary counter is what you're going to use when this delay starts to feel reasonable. So it sounds like, okay, I'm actually not going to follow through with what I'm doing, right? When you catch yourself trying to explain why it's okay to postpone. It's kind of like when you have that logical argument for why it's okay to wait, and it almost sounds spiritual. That's usually your secondary running. All right? Today, your goal is to find your 2 and to hold on to them. So the first pattern, I'm going to give you the 7 counters. The first pattern that we identified yesterday was accusation, right? Accusation sounds like, well, I'm not qualified, or who do you think you are to start this, right? This other person's done it better than you. She has 10 more years on you, right? When that tends to come up initially, it doesn't keep you stuck, but it's the first thought that you have. You're going to say, calling first, confidence later. So I want you to remember that God has never called a qualified person first. Moses moved towards Pharaoh still stuttering. Esther, she moved towards the king and she was still afraid. David ran towards Goliath before the victory ever existed. So the confidence, it came through the obedience, not before it. So we'll tell ourselves confidence first. Calling first, confidence later, okay? Calling first, confidence later. That is not just a phrase. It's actually how God has always worked. So I want you to, when you do that, think of a moment in your own life when God has asked you to move before you felt ready and he showed up anyway. Not in somebody else's story like Moses or David or Esther's, your own story. I tell you that for a reason, because it helps you to settle in that knowledge. That moment is evidence that this counter, it actually stands on that. So you say it from that place. Yep. When accusation hits, you say calling first, confidence later. Now, that's if that's your primary, right? Like you tend to feel accused and you start thinking all these things. But when you feel stuck in the thought, you say, he sees what I don't. Okay? You remind yourself that God sees something in you that you don't. So when accusation tries to come into your mind and make you delay to the point where you don't walk towards whatever God is calling you to, you use this. You say, he sees what I don't. So when accusation arrives as your secondary, what it's doing is using your history as evidence. It says like, okay, based on your track record or your lack of money right now, or like you don't have a ton of followers, right? Like who are you to try to start this business or go live on social media? The counter, it returns you to the one whose perspective is not limited by what you can see. When God gave you the calling on your life, he had full visibility of everything that this accusation was pointing at when he called you to it. There's a level of truth to some of these things, right? If you don't feel qualified for something and you tell yourself, well, I don't have a degree, like that's not fake. You probably don't. And if you tell yourself, well, you don't have a lot of followers, you potentially don't, but that doesn't make you less qualified for what God is calling you to. He knew it when he called you. His word over you, it wasn't issued based on your performance. It also can't be revoked by it. Okay, so when you start to feel like that, you tell yourself, he sees what I don't, and you move in that obedience. Okay, so if accusation is your primary, say calling first, confidence later. You can put that in the chat as a reminder to yourself. If this one is your secondary, it's the thing that keeps you stuck, say he sees what I don't. All right? The second pattern is actually confusion. Okay? Confusion. It's getting so dark in my house. So if this one's your primary and it keeps you spinning and you think, well, what is my calling? Or like, should I do this now? Or was this just me? Is this really God? Whatever confusion looks like for you, right? If this is your primary, you're going to say, what is one faithful step in front of me right now? When I feel confused and I don't know what to do, you just think, what is one faithful step in front of me right now? In Psalm 119, verse 105, it says, your word is a lamp to my feet. The lamp to your feet, it shows you the next steps, not the whole road. We use that because God has never asked anyone to see the full plan before they moved. If I look at Abraham, right, he left and he did it without knowing where he was going. When we look into Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8, it says that he obeyed and he went. That tells me that God has always been a next step kind of God. He's not a full map God, right? He doesn't tell you all of the details ahead of time. You can get the replays for this entire challenge and the replays for this live at the bottom left of your screen. There's a gold icon for that. You'll get all of the days. Even if you just joined today, you'll get day 1. Okay, so we know that God doesn't give us all the details in full. So you're going to say, what is one faithful step that I can take right now that's in front of me? And then you're going to think of a time that he gave you just enough to take one step and then you took it and then he gave you the next one, right? God didn't change. He's still doing that now. That step is actually the clarity. So you just take that step. You don't have to see everything. It's Psalm 119, verse 105. If this one's your secondary, right? This is the one that keeps you stuck. You're going to go back to the last clear thing that God told you to do and do that. So I say that because when confusion arrives as your secondary and it keeps you stuck, that clarity didn't disappear. It actually got buried under the noise that initial thought, like your primary, introduced. I want you to think of the last moment that you had a clear direction from God before you started to fill your mind with all of these questions and they started regenerating. That thing, it hasn't changed. The noise changed. God didn't. So go back to what he said and do that last clear thing that you can remember. His faithfulness to speak, it doesn't expire because the noise got loud or because your life got loud, your circumstances got loud. And if you're like, I don't even know the last clear thing, ask him. Say, God, please remind me of the last clear thing that you told me to do. So if that's you, you'll say, if it's your primary, you'll say, what is one faithful step in front of me right now? And if it's your secondary, you're going to actually go back to the last clear thing that God told you to do. The third one is intimidation. So intimidation is like, who do you think you are? This is bigger than you. I don't even remember all the intimidation ones, right? You tend to get intimidated by the scale of what God is calling you to. When you start to feel that, you're going to say, what is the 10-minute version of this? What is something that I can do in the next 10 minutes? So in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10, it says, do not despise small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. He's not rejoicing when it's completed or like he just wants the work to begin. He rejoices at the start of it, at the beginning. He always has. So when you think of that, I want you to think of a moment that you started something small for God and then you watched him do something with it that you couldn't ever have produced on your own. Like rooms and opportunities opened up that you could not have orchestrated on your own. So when you tend to feel intimidated that you're like, it is bigger than you, it is, right? The calling on your life is God ordained. It's a big deal. But remember the God that all he wants is your participation. It's on him, right? He's going to make happen what needs to happen. That is the God that is present at the 10-minute version. He doesn't wait for the polished version of you to show up. He shows up at the beginning. This one actually doesn't get a second counter, and that's because intimidation, it feels the same regardless of when it shows up. It's going to keep you stuck. It almost always feels impossible. The counter stays the same. So when you start to feel intimidated, say, what can I do within the next 10 minutes? Don't hold on to the things that aren't yours to carry. You drop it and you say, what can I do? It can just be like a quick version of it. So pattern 4 is actually comparison. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but when you tend to compare yourself to other people, you're going to counter it by saying, I am enough as I am. Okay, I am enough as I am. So in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10, it says that each one has received a gift. Minister to it. Minister it to one another. That means that each person, not a version of somebody else, is yours specifically. God didn't call this future version of you. He called you right now as you are currently. So I want you to think of a moment when you're experiencing like the need to want to compare yourself to one another, right? You say, I am enough as I am. And then you think of a moment that God used something so specific about how he made you, right? So specific about how he made you, whether it's your voice, your story, your particular way of seeing something, to reach somebody in a way that nobody else could have. Stupid mouse. Okay, he designed that on purpose. He wasn't confused about who he was calling. So when you start to feel like you have the need to compare yourself to other people, you say, I am enough as I am. It's not simply a feeling about yourself. It's actually a declaration about the God who designed you so specifically for this. This one doesn't get a secondary, and that's because comparison, it actually runs the same regardless of when it shows up. This counter, it always stays the same. You're going to say, I am enough as I am. So pattern 5 is distraction. So if this one's your primary, you're going to tell yourself, when does this get done this week? And you're going to give it a day and you're going to give it a time. That's because in Psalm 90, verse 12, it says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So when we number our days, it's a stewardship posture that's actually rooted in the understanding that God works inside time. He gave us these specific days for a reason. Okay, so we're going to figure out, even though whatever's going on in my life, it may feel like a distraction, I know that the calling that he gave me is important. When does this get done? I'm going to put a day. I'm going to give it a time. And we're going to think of a time that we made a specific commitment to move towards what God placed in us, and he met us there. That is because he is a God who shows up when you show up. So we're going to give it a day and a time. It's not a planning practice. I want you to think of this as more of like an act of faith. That we have faith in a God who meets faithfulness with faithfulness. And if distraction is the thing that keeps you stuck, this is your secondary, you're going to ask yourself, what did saying later cost me last time? Last time I procrastinated, last time I delayed long enough, what did it cost me? So when distraction comes in and it keeps you delayed, it makes it feel responsible. This counter, it isn't a technique. It's actually a practice of remembering. So when you think of it, you think, well, what did agreeing with later cost me the last time I did this? You think about, okay, what season ended up passing by me, or like what window closed because I just kept pushing this aside. This isn't condemnation. So I don't want you to think of it in that way. It's a reminder that God's faithfulness, it doesn't change, but the windows, they do. Our season that we are allowed to walk in that obedience, that changes. That has an expiration date. Okay? You keep saying later, and I want you to look at what it cost you last time and let that be the evidence that actually moves you now. So, pattern 6 is isolation. Isolation is pretty self-explanatory too, right? It keeps you isolated. It makes you think that you need to just keep this inside, and the thing that you're working on, if nobody sees it, then they can't judge it. You don't need to tell anybody, right? No. So when you start to feel isolated, when you have that thought, you're going to tell one person what God told you. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 10, it says, 2 are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. That's because God has always worked through community. I want you to think of a moment where somebody else's presence, whether it was their prayer, their word, even just simply by showing up, it was actually the specific thing that God used to keep you moving when you would have probably wanted to stop. He designed it that way because he knew that you were going to need people. The assignment that you're on right now, it was never meant to be carried in silence. So the wound that a lot of us carry, it makes you not want to be seen by other people because it feels too much to bear right now. That wound doesn't get to decide who carries this with you. God placed people in your life, and he did it on purpose. So what you're going to do when you tend to feel like you are isolated and there's no one around, find one person and tell them what God told you. You don't need to know the whole plan. You just need to tell them what God said. This simple act, this one act, it returns you to how he actually designed this to work. This one doesn't get a secondary. It's because the action is the same. You're just going to tell one person. If you know one person and isolation is yours, you can just put a Y in the comments, or you can just think to yourself about that person. Okay, but try to remember one person. Pattern 7 is false burden. Okay, this one is very relevant to, I think, a lot of us, but false burden is like the need to take on more things than what God has ever even asked us to carry. We try to be the fixer, the doer, the responsible one for everybody, right? When it keeps you from doing the things that God is calling you to, and this is your primary, you think, if I don't get this done, it's going to hurt somebody else. If I drop the ball, my family depends on me, right? You tend to think that. You tell yourself, is this mine, or did I just pick it up? So in Matthew chapter 11 verse 30, it says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." I want you to think about what that means coming from Jesus. It's not that the assignment is going to be small. It's that he's going to carry it with you. So when you start to feel like that, think of a moment that you had to put something down that you had been carrying by yourself, and then you felt God step in a way that you couldn't have at all, and he actually handled it. The relief of that moment that you felt, it was probably big. That's what his burden feels like, right? When what you're carrying, it's crushing you. He's not asking you to carry it by yourself or to carry it better. He's asking you whether it's actually yours to even carry. That's a big difference. So you're going to ask yourself, is this mine or did I pick it up? It's not you setting boundaries. It's actually stewardship. It's a conversation with God about the specific thing that you were designed to carry that he actually assigned to you. Was it yours? So if this one's your secondary, you're going to say, what is the assignment that I'm protecting by staying busy? What am I protecting? If I stay busy, what is that actually protecting? So when false burden is your secondary, the busyness, it's usually covering up something. I want you to think of what God has been consistently drawing your attention back to while your hands have been full of everything else. He hasn't stopped pointing at the thing that he's calling you to. He keeps bringing it back up. That persistent return is actually his faithfulness. The busyness is what has been answering him with not yet, right? God is saying, go ahead and minister to those women. Go ahead and lead a Bible study. Start that business I told you to start. And we keep saying, yes, God, but not now. Not yet. My family needs me to do this one thing. Or I need to resolve this conflict, right? And he's saying, okay. But then he points right back to it. So I want you to look at the two counters that you decided for today. We're going to be your primary and your secondary. Those are the two that you're going to practice this week. Okay, you're not going to do all of them. You're just going to do two of them. Your primary is the one that the moment that you use that counter, the moment that the interference fires. You do it before it settles, okay? That secondary counter, you're going to use that the moment that it's the delay that you're thinking of doing, it starts to feel reasonable. They're going to just sound like words at first. Just continue to use them anyway. So every single time you do this, you're building that new pathway. The brain strengthens with whatever gets used. And you're going to do that until one day these counters, they fire automatically before the stronghold forms. Holy Spirit renews the mind. Obedience rewires the brain. Both of them are working together inside of a structure that holds to the level of consistency that the rewiring requires, okay? So that is our day. For those of you that came back or this is your first day, either one is totally fine. Make sure you get the replays. And if you came back today, that means something, okay? This counter, however, it only works because it reorients you to God, not because it's a better thought, okay? The interference, it loses its grip when your attention moves back to who He is and what He's already done. To me, that question, that makes me question, right? It's not just how do I counter this interference, but how do I stay close enough to God so that this counter becomes automatic? This doesn't just happen in 3 days. Unfortunately, that's not how quickly our brains work. This is going to happen in consistent proximity to God. Okay, so I want to remind you of that. This isn't going to be just a quick 3-day thing. That's why you guys get the replays for you to come back to time and time and time again. All right, so that is it for today. I do my Bible studies every Monday through Friday, and every Wednesday through Thursday, I do these Hearing God Through the Noise challenges. So I invite you guys not only to get the replays for this, but you can get the replays for the Bible study as well in that same place. And I invite you guys to come back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central. Okay? Norma, you can get the replays for it. It's the exact same. So sending you all hugs, and I will see you tomorrow.